Hello everybody, welcome to Ace2Face here on Face the Ace. We love my naming conventions, it's great. Today we're going to do a little more of a deep dive into Superman 4, A Quest for Peace. I'm sure you saw my video earlier in the week. I wanted to, for some reason, talk about this movie more, and I am joined by a very great guest. You may know him. We've talked about movies on various shows together and on this channel back in the day. We got Nate, as some fans would know as Poplu. The Ewok is here. Welcome in, man. I'm glad to be talking about cape shit with you once again.
Ace, thanks for having me on. When you texted me like 3 days ago and like, hey, you want to talk about Superman 4? I kind of was like, just like right now, like, you want me to like call you? And you're like, watch it on Saturday and we'll record Sunday. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me clear up my weekend for Superman 4, A Quest for Peace. You got it.
We've talked about this movie a little bit together, but I was not in the state of mind, let's say, to talk about DC movies that day. What are your what's kind of like your connection with the Christopher Reeve movies growing up?
So I think the first superhero movie I ever saw, and I could be wrong, was the original Richard Donner Superman. I think both my parents like grew up loving that movie. I think, you know, a lot of that's timing. They're both children of the early 70s, so I think it came out in theaters when they were a kid. They probably didn't see it in theaters, but when home video took off, it was probably like one of the first superhero movies they experienced. So like before the Burton Batmans and all that stuff, this is what I saw, and I always have a soft spot in my heart for the Donnerverse. I really do. Yeah. Especially Superman 2. I really think that movie is just ahead of its time in some regards. By the time I got around to seeing 3 and 4, I have the same feeling with the Superman sequels as I do like the Rocky sequels, where like there's a fine line between being a sequel to a great movie and then just being like weird, and we'll get into it. But yeah, I hold this in higher regard than I think the general public.
I agree, because the original Superman movie, I remember, is like one of my big like first like movie memories as a kid. Like I specifically remember watching it in my like childhood home. I specifically remember like, you know, Lois Lane dying in the first one, and as a kid you're like, oh my god, what's Superman gonna do? And him reversing the earth, as ridiculous as that is probably to an adult, as a kid your mind's just kind of blown, and like it's a really cool fun little story. And I always have a soft spot for that movie. I remember, I believe my mother was a big Christopher Reeve fan, so this movie and like Back to the Future, like those were like the movies that like, oh, like my kids need to see this. Like this is like the movies you need to watch to like learn about life, essentially, because Superman's not really a bad person, at least that version of Superman, not really a bad person to learn like morals from, as they really tried some interesting subjects in this movie as it goes on. But then by the time Superman 4 goes around, they're kind of in uncharted territory. Like we have like trilogies by now. I think Return of the Jedi's out by now. Like we have trilogies and big blockbusters, but a fourth movie, it is kind of uncharted territory when it comes to like major motion pictures.
Yeah, I've got some research in front of me. I just want to see one thing real quick. So pardon me for looking off camera as I type into my other computer, because that's the world we live in now, surrounded by screens. Superman joined like the Rocky like tier of sequels, where I believe it was 84 or 85 Rocky 4 came out, and then like right around the corner was this one in 87. And yeah, I mean, the drop off in quality is not necessarily like a product of the people involved. I mean, I obviously think Richard Donner is a fantastic director and made those first two movies like really, really strong. But like in terms of like, this isn't a thing like you get in the Tim Burton Batman movies, where major characters that maybe had plot points and beats set up, most notably Harvey Dent. Yeah. Where like the canon almost changes because of recasting, or Batman changes actors. You've got your big three. You've got Margot Kidder, you've got Gene Hackman, and you've got Superman in all four of these movies. You've got Christopher Reeves, who I still think is the definitive Superman. Like, we haven't seen anyone do that role better yet. I love Henry Cavill, but like, no.
It's weird the connection he kind of had with culture, where like, of course we didn't exist yet when he, you know, got injured, fell off the horse and got hurt, but like it's weird you vividly remember that. Like that was a big deal that like somebody of that stature got such a devastating injury and, you know, pretty much was paralyzed after that. Like the way like family members have described that to me, like it sounded like heartbreaking. Like This is a guy, and I unfortunately haven't seen the Christopher Reeve documentary that came out recently that DC put out, but now this generation kind of hears his story is really cool, and I feel like we had that connection as kids because Superman Returns was coming out, a kind of sequel to this weird Christopher Reeve universe, and I'm sure we'll get into the weirdness of this universe soon, but like, yeah, like it's weird how that franchise was kind of able to live on. That kind of almost James Bond Superman, essentially, they tried to do.
Yeah, that's kind of what they tried to do there. And
yeah,
I respected it for what it was. That movie's fun, but it's I would take any of these 4 movies over that one, including Superman 3. Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yes. There's a level of earnesty that all 4 of these movies have.
Yeah.
Not that movie doesn't, but it is going for something tonally a little more, like, not necessarily tongue-in-cheek. Like, it's not poking fun at the Donnerverse, but it's imitating it in a way that almost feels like a caricature.
I think I mentioned it in the video where, of course, a cheaper studio took on making this movie.
Yeah.
But there's almost, like, a charm to it, in a way. Like, maybe if I was going to the theater expecting Superman 2 quality at that time, maybe I'd be a little pissed. But I don't know, especially as a kid, when I probably saw all these movies in like a very fast amount of time, 2 through 4 always just blended in for me. Like they kind of were all kind of like one movie until when I got older and I was like, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. For a while, it was kind of one in everything else, at least for me. Because
I think even as a kid, I think Superman 2 was always just like one step above for me.
I remember Zod.
Yeah, cool. Zod was great, and you have the other his other like Krypton, enemies and foes, and I think what that movie does in like elevating the stakes and expanding the world is like a really good direct sequel to a superhero movie. And until recently, I felt like it was kind of forgotten, like in a weird way. Like I think with like the Donner cut and like this re-visioning, like people have kind of taken Superman 2 back, but growing up, that was always my favorite one.
Especially in an era where we had the, Snyder Cut debacle and everything. The Donner Cut was a real thing. It was kind of the Snyder Cut before Snyder Cut, and there was a lot of controversy with that.
Yeah, I was doing some research just because I wanted to make sure that certain characters made their origin in this and not in like a comic book issue from 1961 or something. I found out that they now on the DC like fandom like wiki refer this as the Donnerverse, which I think is terrifying. It is crazy the impact that Snyderverse has had on cinema.
We did see a snippet of the Donnerverse, I guess, in that Flash movie, and he's next to Supergirl. So I guess that means Supergirl is in the Donnerverse. Is in the
Donnerverse, confirmed, yes.
Interesting, yeah. So I guess that pretty much confirms it. Let's get into the movie. Actually, the movie starts off with the farm being sold. So it kind of going right into the weird Donnerverse canon. Is the mom dead? Like, they don't really say, and Clark finds this weird Kryptonian thing that's going to heal him at the end of the movie that he just so happens to have, and I guess it's from his mother. There's a lot of confusion with both Superman's Earth mother and his Kryptonian mother. A very weird, like, side plot to kick off the movie.
Well, and, like, I really love the exchange, too, with, like, I forget his name. It's, like, the real estate agent. Like, he's, like... He's just like, so you're gonna sell? There's a guy who wants to blind buy it. And, like, I was watching this again yesterday thinking, like... Oh, is Luthor trying to buy out the farm from underneath Kent? Like, that'd be a fun plot point.
That'd be good.
But yeah, no, he just doesn't want to sell it to somebody who's gonna develop it, which is like, it's very funny. It's very like on the nose with the American values that Superman has through the rest of this film.
He wants to sell it to another farmer. The real estate guy's like, well, that's not progress. Soon all these farms are gonna be gone. And I'm like, geez, I know it's like 1980 something, but was that really the thinking that we're just gonna have no farms in like 10 years?
Yeah, if only Gal Gadot was here to sing about it. Imagine there's no farms. It's easy if you try.
And then I love the gag where the crib was beat up and the real estate guy was like, "Your Pa Kent was such a jokester. They said you got mad one night and kicked the crib and broke it." And Clark's just like, "Yeah, my dad's a real jokester." Like that was really good.
I love the Jerry Lewis style like physical comedy with Clark Kent in these movies. Like he is like playing up a doofus so much. Like when he's like the way he misses that curveball is ridiculous. He does a whole fucking 360 with it. Oh wait, can I swear on here? Whatever, I'm gonna do it anyway. Your guy can fix it. Agent K will fix this. Thank you, buddy.
I feel like, and I think I've discussed this with you before off camera, where I think the modern versions of Superman have killed the Clark Kent character, and that's why a lot of people think the Superman character is boring, because you don't have that dynamic of Clark being this bubbly, like, that type of humor, almost like Buster Keaton-like, and then you have the big, strong Superman, because that's the whole idea of the Clark Kent character. It's not just the glasses, it's the physicalness of him, it's the way he speaks. There's more to it than that, and the modern movies kind of lost it. Like, the ending of Man of Steel is literally Henry Cavill put on a pair of glasses and then put on the tightest button-up he can on his first job at the Daily Planet, and I'm just like,
no, we gotta get him in a baggy David Byrne like fucking big suit, make him look like a guy who's not Superman.
Even the Christopher Reeve ones, he's wearing a suit you could tell is a suit too big, and from the James Gunn trailers that we've seen of this recording, looks like they're bringing that back. And they also gave him the broccoli haircut, which I think is a good charm too.
Yeah. I don't know how he's gonna fix his hair in a matter of seconds as well. Another fun bit of this movie is I think the first time you see it is where like they keep it one take where he goes into somewhere and changes out of his outfit and comes right out, and it's like they clearly cut, but like they make it look seamless. It's pretty good. They even do a good job of distracting it with like background motion and split diopters and stuff. Like there's good filmmaking principles in this movie. Like the people that are like, oh, this movie's barely cohesive and has like the worst plot ever, it's like, well, yeah, it's not a great script, but it's a good movie.
I think the first like 45 minutes are like a really, really solid, superhero movie in the 80s. Like I was kind of trying to find ways. I was kind of going crazy, and then the movie kind of falls off, as we'll see. Now, Nate, you're a current New Yorker. I have to ask this. Do you now have a new intrusive thought that somebody's just gonna like pass out your subway driver and just like on the gas and the train's gonna keep going?
Brother, let me tell you about what happened today. So I went and got lunch with some friends, Alden and Amy. You might know them from my podcast, Brap Watch. We got a nice little brunch going. It was very chill, very relaxed, calm Sunday. I leave and I go to hop on the train, and after I go one stop, the conductor comes over the loudspeaker and he's like, yeah, someone got struck by a train at 71st Street, so we're gonna be stuck here for a while. There's about 8 trains ahead of us, some are being rerouted to express. I'll keep you posted. God. And I was like, all right, that's it. I got out and walked all the way home. I'm dead serious. I walked 4.3 miles home.
That's when you needed Superman.
It's like 13 degrees outside. Ugh. Yeah, it was crazy. But no, my favorite part of that whole scene is right after he saves the day and the guy he makes sure that the guy's getting taken to a medic. He's like, now I want the good people of this city to know the most reliable and safest transportation is this train. All right, take care.
I love that.
And it's like, yeah, that's great. It's full of shit. No, subway's dangerous, people. Heed caution.
When he went up to the guy, went up to the driver after, and he's like telling the cops like he'll be all right. I'm like, you don't know that, he just had a fucking heart attack.
Well, but we know in the first Superman movie, he's telling Lois to quit smoking, and he's like looking into her lungs, like he can check people's vitals with his X-ray vision. He's like, oh yeah, this guy just needs to lay off the fucking, I don't know, whatever, sodium or high cholesterol, like
yellow dye number 3. He's gotta lay
whatever.
off.
RFK's gonna take care of it, okay?
And that whole sequence, like, and Lois throughout this movie is so down bad for Superman. Like,
I am so freaking confused with the writing for her character in this movie.
So yeah, shortly after,
it is maybe the weakest link of this film.
It's so unfortunate because I remember Lois, in the first 2 movies being such a strong character and like almost like, you know, that kind of Carrie Fisher Princess Leia type
Absolutely.
where, oh, you really believe she can hold her own.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of Superman 2, they do the kissing thing that wipes her memory, and it's like, okay, whatever. But then in this movie, he's almost gaslighting Lois Lane, because he gives her the memory back. They go flying around. They use the same shots as Superman 2, and they come back, and he wipes her memory again with a kiss. I'm like, this is straight up gaslighting. I don't know if we need to cancel Superman. I don't know what's going on here.
I think it's problematic for sure. But you know, I don't think Superman works without Lois Lane. I know he has like that
Agreed.
rule where he's not allowed to have a favorite human or whatever, and like that's fine and all, but I think she's the one who brings the humanity to Superman. She's what makes Kal a man and a human.
Well, we see this other love interest in the movie. We have Lacey Warfield, because her father is taking over the Daily Planet. Does Superman like her? Does Clark like her, or is he just like too nice to say no to dates? I don't know what this relationship's all about.
Well, and it's weird because like Lois is also trying to like wingman for both of them.
Yeah,
like she's like, oh yeah, you'll love Clark. He's a Boy Scout. He's a goody two shoes. But also, I don't know if he's gonna be into you. You're kind of a bitch. Like that's pretty much what she tells her to her face. And she's like, everyone likes me. I've got so much money. And I'm like,
one of my favorite quotes.
They're setting up this Lacey Warfield character to be like an antagonist almost that like gets in the way. Like but she's too connected to Warfield, like her father, and
then she ends up having a redemption arc instead, which I guess happened in the gym scene.
Which is like fine, I suppose. Oh, that gym scene needs to be cut. Why did that make the cut? That did not need to be in the film. I can just confidently say that scene adds nothing.
There are some scenes that I just completely forgot. I'm so glad I watched the movie today, because I was like, wow, there are some scenes that it just fell right out of my head probably once I watched it. That gym scene's one of them where it's like, what even happens in that scene?
He's getting like the bodybuilder like fitness coach that they have. One is smaller than Clark. Like if you're gonna do that bit, like you need to have some like get like it's 1987. What pro wrestlers could you have gotten for a day? Like Jake the Snake Roberts could have shown up. Like get someone who's got some meat on those bones.
It would have been funnier too when Clark throws the weight at him if it's like a bodybuilder like falling back. Like that would be the, you know, visual comedy. I don't care that he like put down a twink. Like I expect that.
Yeah, none of that scene worked. That whole scene needed to be cut. But speaking of pacing and like the scenes in this film, for the most part, there's two scenes that drag on way too long, and we'll get to them later, I'm sure. But for the most part, this is a tight 90-minute superhero movie.
It is.
Can we bring these back?
I know.
Like this is perfect.
If I don't know the runtime of Captain America 4, but if Captain America 4 was this runtime, I'm not like going out of my way to see that movie, but you could maybe convince me if it's like an hour and a half long to like go on like a Saturday afternoon. Like why do I need to devote 3 hours to every superhero movie now for side characters?
And honestly, like the amount of development and characterization you get in an effective amount of time, like there's like even we're talking about Lacey, who's this like love interest kind of character who's, you know, maybe not set up the best, but like she's got a 3-act structure and development to her arc.
Very attractive. Probably not as attractive as Lois. If I was Clark, I'm definitely still choosing Lois.
I don't know. They do it better than in Spider-Man 3 with the dual love interests.
That's very true. There's some like Spider-Man references I noticed, like when Superman's cape was sold to Warfield, and the guy's he's like, I got it for cheap, and I'm like, even in the 80s, who would sell something like that for cheap? It's like the garbage guy in Spider-Man when Jameson's like, I'll give you $20 for it, or whatever he says. Like, it's that Spider-Man suit. Like, what?
Yeah, I really like all the Daily Planet stuff in this movie. I really like the workplace drama of them getting bought out, and I like the like moral conflicts with what they should be presenting to the public and stuff like that. Like all of those scenes are pretty cool, and I like the redemption at the end with the original guy taking what's his name, Mr. White. I like him taking the paper back and like all that stuff, and getting the banks to allow them to be a public service. I mean, that's, you know, actually in practice a big moral issue. Like that wouldn't work in real life, but in a world where we have a guy who can just get rid of all the nukes on planet Earth, this is a pretty cool turning the Daily Planet into a co-op. I give a thumbs up to.
Speaking of the morals and choices in this movie. So we all of a sudden cut to a classroom, and a teacher flat out asks a class full of, what is it, probably like 9-10-year-olds?
I don't know, it looked like a 4th grade class.
Yeah, like, how should we stop the Cold War? And I'm like, I can't imagine. So I'm a kid that grew up in the 2000s. Imagine if my teacher asked me, how do I stop the war on terror? Like, I don't.
Yeah. And also, like, people were just like teachers were just throwing the news on for their classrooms. Like, no wonder why every millennial I know watched 9/11 happen. Like, what? Your entire first hour at school is watching CNN? Like, what happened? Anyway, on that note, this is the best case scenario of Jeremy spoke in class today. Pearl Jam reference. I was worried, like, the way they set that up. He's in the back corner. He's not even paying attention. They're like, Jeremy doesn't even know what's going on. And then he's like the one who's gonna like solve the world problem. Like, I mean, like, this is a best case scenario. If this movie came out in 1999 or 2002, we would have a way different Jeremy spoke in class today moment.
Imagine the ego on that kid later on where he's like, I destroyed every nuke in the world. You could thank me. I wrote a letter to Superman. Like... an insane thing to think about.
I do love the kid in the front of the class who's like, write our congressman, that's not gonna do anything. And I'm like, wow, that kid's based. Then don't ask him where he was on January 6th, 2021, but, that kid's based.
I can't imagine ever doing a subject like this in modern movies, especially like with the MCU, where now they've pushed everything into the future. I think that was a way to avoid like politics, because I think the MCU right now is in like 2030 because of that Endgame gap and everything.
I have no idea what the hell you're even talking about right now. I'm not even gonna
lie. I just feel like they found it. Like, imagine if Anthony Mackie as Captain America was involved in the Ukraine war, like right now. Like, they did this right in the smack dab of the Cold War, which is like super fascinating. Like, I get the Cold War was cold, so nobody was, like, dying, so that, helps, but still, it was a scary situation. It definitely was something incredibly serious in the news every day.
There were, like, real-world, conflicts at this time about what this movie's about in terms of the stockpiling and arms race of nuclear warheads and, America's ties to Russia and that relationship and all of that, which... I mean, allegedly ended in the early 90s, but kind of feels like it's still going on, so, like, who knows? But yeah, I do respect the movie for doing that. I think it's kind of cool.
Did this movie end the Cold War?
No.
I think that'd be no.
No, I think the Cold War is still going on, unfortunately. But no, this movie did not end the Cold War, but it is one of Hollywood's many attempts to do so. Between this, Rocky IV, Rocky IV. What is it with Forrest and trying to end the Cold War?
Yeah, it's like, that's an interesting pattern. You also wrote here, why is Clark Kent a Dolphins fan? No, yeah. I didn't get that connection. So it was a Nicholas Alexander reference.
The first scene in his apartment, and I mean, if you're showing any footage from the movie, it's there. I think it's at like the 21-minute mark. Underneath his television and entertainment system is like a little like scarf, like flag thing, and it says Miami Dolphins on it.
Nope.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, what?
Huh.
If I'm not mistaken, Smallville's in Iowa.
The geography of the Donnerverse is weird because it's quite obvious it's New York in this movie, right? But I always pictured Metropolis as the Chicago of the
That
DC
would make
universe.
more sense.
Yeah, because if Metropolis is New York in the Donnerverse, where's Gotham? Does Gotham even exist in the Donnerverse? Is it like the Snyderverse where they're right next to each other like Queens and Manhattan? I have a lot of questions when it comes to geography, especially if if the Kents are in Iowa, then Superman probably has to physically, which it's Superman, he could fly, but I always figured it'd be like Chicago, because that would be like your Midwestern metropolis. Like, that would be the big metropolis of the Midwest. Why would Superman go to the East Coast to work journalism?
Another great logistics question in this film is from when the Mr. Warfield buys out the paper, and he's going through and like doing audits on everyone's flight receipts and stuff like that after canceling. The Lois Lane's trip to Paris being canceled is hilarious. Like, she's practicing French in the first 2 scenes of the movie, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, budgetary cuts for the movie, not for the in-world universe. We can't go to Paris to film your scenes."
It's weird because it kind of represents the studio as a whole. Like, it might be thinking too deep on the plot, but the antagonists are the ones cutting cost, much like the struggles of this movie being made. That's an interesting analogy.
And I do like that the Mr. Warfield guy is like, "Clark, why don't you have any flights?" It's like, imagine the world where like this Clark Kent guy's just like, "Oh, I don't fly. I just show up places. I don't like flying. It makes me sick. I prefer to drive." What if they send Clark to Paris? He's just gonna drive across the ocean?
He took a boat. And so, after all that, Lex Luthor makes his return to this movie, which is always great to see Gene Hackman. He escapes prison by trapping 2 police officers in a convertible car from his nephew Lenny Luthor, which I know you have some thoughts on our boy Lenny here.
I don't know which producer just saw Pretty in Pink and was like, "We need that kid in this movie, but he needs to be playing like Ferris Bueller." Like, it is the dumbest decision ever to give Lex Luthor, in the context of this universe, a dopey sidekick nephew.
On paper, it's like, okay, you have like, Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, all these movies are really popular with young people, and you want Superman to be hip. Makes sense to cast somebody, but why do you make him the weird, comedic, like, almost like joke of the movie, though? Like, wouldn't you want somebody cool next to Superman? I know Superman doesn't have, like, a Robin, but you could have made something work.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't necessarily need much support for Superman. I think doing, like, an antagonist, like, sidekick is a good idea. But, like, the way they wrote this character is just so stupid and out of touch.
I just want to mention, he pulled up into his car, right, and had music blasting, but he had headphones on.
Yep.
That was really bugging me the whole time.
Also, like, the 2 security guards watching this chain gang of guys, like, digging in a quarry or whatever it is like, they're both so fascinated by this car, like, heaven forbid a Cybertruck pulled up.
And it is, like, an ugly car. Like, they didn't have him pull up in a Corvette or anything. Like, it's, like, not even, like, why would 2, like, 45-year-old men be into that?
Yeah, especially when it's like some punk teenager driving it. They'd be like, "Get lost, kid."
Yeah, it was played by John Cryer, who in the video I talked about, like, where his career went, of course, like 2.5 Men, and he goes to play Lex Luthor himself in the Supergirl show, and they did all that in the CW.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, he in my research, he had an interview where he's like, he took a lot of inspiration from Gene Hackman, and I guess Gene Hackman was a big influence on the rest of his career. Like, I guess he taught him a lot just on the set of this movie, talking to him and that. So really cool, like, full circle for John Cryer's career.
Was Gene Hackman able to talk when the cameras weren't rolling? Gene Hackman seems shit-faced in this entire movie. Like, and I don't have a problem with that. You're doing the 4th Superman movie, and you're one of the best actors of your generation. Like, I'm sure he did not make nearly as much money on this movie as he did the previous ones, seeing as how the budget was like $17 million.
And the state of his hair in this movie, it's like, bro, just shave it.
Damn, I messed up. We gotta go bald, man. Oh,
shit. You're Lex Luthor as well. Like, come on. Like, that's all I kept thinking about every time, the state of his hairline.
Dude,
oh, my God.
If we got a bald Gene Hackman in this movie, that would have been sick.
Yeah, it would have been perfect. Cause
I would have actually taken him seriously.
It was the most comic booky Lex Luthor type, because, you know, in the original, he's got the snarkiness of Lex Luthor, but he's like this real estate tycoon that's not really Lex Luthor. Like, you love him because it's Gene Hackman, but by the time you get to 4, it's like, oh, okay, this is like a really, like, cartoonish Lex Luthor, and I could get into this.
He is like a supervillain by all definitions in this movie, and it is like, it's honestly kind of what you want to match, like, the tone of this movie. Like, the Luthor stuff is not out of place. Like, the Lenny stuff is a little over the top, and I don't have that big of an issue with it. I just really think they could have written that character to be more interesting. Like, they just put him there, and he's in, like, cool outfits, but, like, why?
God, you could tell they were really trying to sell this catchphrase, because every time he was in trouble, he went, "Oh no," in that like surfer bro like type of accent, like oh no.
Yeah, you mean to tell me Bill and Ted weren't free to do this movie?
Yeah. You could have put like Keanu Reeves like in this role. I'm sure we'll get to the recasting later, but yeah, on paper I understand why they did Lenny. It's amazing the amount of characters in this, because we didn't even get to the actual like heavy of this movie yet. So
well, he doesn't show up until the last 20 minutes, so can you blame us?
Yeah, like Lex escapes from prison thanks to his nephew. They steal Superman's hair that was weighing up 1,000-pound like metal ball. That was
cool scene.
Fun,
cool
very
scene.
Cartoonish. Looked like it was something like right out of a comic book, and all that's funny. And then it's the creation of Nuclear Man, played by Mark Pillow. Funny name.
Didn't do much. This is pretty much his entire career.
Let's fight somewhere empty.
Gene Hackman voices him, so I don't even know what the guy sounds like. So they shipped off Superman's hair attached to a nuke that went into the sun that created Nuclear Man. And it literally, when Nuclear Man's coming out of the sun, it literally looks like the closing shot of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like you could end 2001.
It starts as like a fetus, and then it just starts expanding into Nuclear Man.
I was like, that's all I could think of when he's being born. What do you think the look of Nuclear Man? I think that they picked like a tall, good-looking dude. The suit's a little weird. It's got the same pattern as Lex's penthouse, which is funny.
It is very of its time. And it's also very cheap. Like,
yeah,
I don't.
The N is like very thin and
it's
in
also
like
diagonally
font.
in like a weird way. It's like it's not quite centered. Like I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. It feels very like Rocky and Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's like, oh, we've got this golden sun guy. he's just there, but like. I mean, the movie kind of falls apart with Nuclear Man not working as intended.
Yeah. I really think the movie is, like, pretty fine until, like, it seems Nuclear Man hits and the plot falls apart, the edit falls apart. There's a lot of weird cuts here. Like, I get I'm watching the fourth Superman movie, right? But you flat out told me his weakness is cold, but then he has cold breath as a power. So...
Well, and another thing is they explain it again in this movie, although it's been established in the Donnerverse already up until this point. In the other Superman movies, Superman also gets his power from the sun. The sun is the closest energy source to match that of what is on Krypton. So that's why they put Superman on Earth.
Yeah.
How is he able to defeat the guy by doing the same thing that, in theory, should defeat him? Or one of the things that should at least weaken him.
And before I go into the actual fight, before this, we saw a sequence that I really liked with Superman going back and forth between Clark as he's on a double date. I love this. Did the Hannah Montana movie steal this scene?
Well, I think this is like a comedic trope that has been done since the days of like Buster Keaton as well. Mm-hmm. And really like where I could trace this to is like Nutty Professor. Like it feels his physical performance as Clark Kent is so Jerry Lewis coded, it's kind of crazy. I think he does it so well. Like I think Christopher Reeves is an incredible actor. Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I like that scene as much as you do. I think it gets...
I found it very entertaining.
It gets almost annoying. Like, I'm glad it ends when it
went
does.
A little long. Yeah. I think I like the idea more than the actual execution. But... And then Lex calls him on a frequency. And he's like, this is the only frequency you can hear me. But then he's projecting himself in Times Square, I'm just going to say, on a screen. And so nobody's seeing that. Like I could kind of believe the audio frequency, but I can't believe nobody in Times Square is not seeing your face right now on a gigantic screen. The guy that is probably on the #1 like most wanted list right now, he just escaped prison. And also, he's obviously in his penthouse that he probably lives in, right? Nobody has thought to check there.
Cartoon logic? I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like all forms of like law enforcement in this film are kind of bumbling idiots. Like I think that is what makes Superman kind of like elevated from all of that. Like
Superman in this movie more than ever, I would say even more than the Snyder movies, is kind of treated like this savior figure. The way every country just agrees to give their nukes like standing ovation, like zero disagreements. We're gonna do this. no questions asked, Superman, here's our nukes. You get it to a point where maybe it's almost like a fear of God mentality where, well, this guy would just fucking nuke us if we don't listen to him. It's an alien from another world with extraordinary powers. But at the same time, there's no conflict, which I get. The movie is already dealing with a lot of side plots, but not one conflict there.
One thing that I think is really weird is this movie never follows up with Jeremy. Like, we see him bring Superman to the UN, and it's this whole publicity stunt for the Daily Planet. But then, like, we don't, like, see where that goes. Like, there's no, like, that's just the end of the Jeremy arc. Like, he wrote a letter in class, and then he gets to meet Superman, and now he's not a character in this movie.
If this happened now, he'd be, like, huge on TikTok. Like, he'd be like the Rizzler.
Yeah, dude. He would be, like, hanging out with the Costco guys and doing ads for Outback Steakhouse.
Opening, like, packs of trading cards.
Yeah.
Yep. That's very true.
Like, oh, I got a shiny Charizard. Remember that time I hung out with Superman?
Little side piece on Nuclear Man. Do you think instead of Lobot, Jason Momoa should just play Nuclear Man?
No. We should never see Nuclear Man ever again. This is stupid.
There's no way, even in a James Gunn universe, you can't make Nuclear Man work.
So, if you are going to do Nuclear Man again, it would be in the confines of a James Gunn thing, but it needs to be entirely as a joke. And I'm not talking as, like, entirely as a joke until we decide to give the character a scene that really, like, redeems them or makes them cool. Like, he doesn't need to be like a polka dot man. He needs to be like a Howard the Duck. Like, just, like, throwaway thing. If you want a montage of Superman beating up a heavy, use Nuclear Man. That's fine.
You could use him like how he used Adam Warlock in Guardians 3.
No. Even that's too much. Adam Warlock is perfect in Guardians 3. Nuclear Man does not deserve a fraction of that screen time.
It's amazing that they had so much faith in this. They had so much stock in Nuclear Man that they had him win a fight against Superman. Superman gets all sick and... Yeah,
what happened? He gets, like, the flu?
Lois comes over.
Oh my god, that scene sucks so much.
The scene is so bad. He's obviously, like, dying. And in Lois's head, this is just a normal fucking person. Like, your coworker is, like dying.
Yeah.
And she's like, Superman's just not answering my calls. It's like, what?
Well, and she bullies him for not, like, showing up to work or, like, calling out sick and, like, is obviously very ill. He's sweating like crazy. And he's laying there in front of his fireplace, which also, fireplace in, like, a middle-class apartment in Manhattan or Metropolis, whatever. What's the cost of rent there? I want Clark Kent's apartment in this movie. It is perfect.
When she walked in and if I walked in and saw that, I'm walking out because whatever he has, I don't want that.
No, and she comes and sits down and talks about her situationship with Superman. It's unacceptable. It's bad behavior.
It's very non-Lois behavior.
Yes.
Like, I hate to be like that, but I don't think Lois would just, like, girl gossip over Superman to Clark.
Yeah, her dying, sick, gay best friend, Clark Kent.
And Superman had these weird powers too, like he could rebuild the Great Wall of China.
That was cool. I like
the Man of Steel. The Man of Steel version of Superman. If he had that power, that would have went a lot more smoothly with him post Man of Steel with the city of Metropolis.
Let's not forget he can cook a duck to perfection through two walls. That is the best part of that scene.
Ladies, where's your man at? Because dude, if you could find a man that could cook a duck perfectly like that, like, holy shit.
Yes, Superman's got it.
All right, so we did all that. Clark has this Kryptonian power that his mother gave him that I guess heals him, but we don't actually see the scene. He's just holding it, and he's got, like, gray hair at this point. So has Nuclear Man's nails, like, aged him? Like, he looks like he's getting older.
They don't really do enough explanation there, and I feel like there was this, like, mentality where they're like, we gotta just get this movie over with. Like, I don't know if it was like they were running out of money or what was going on. By that point in production, it's just like, we're wrapping it up.
We get to the climax, and I wrote down a play-by-play of this because I just couldn't believe what I was watching. So, Nuclear Man is essentially gooning at Lex's penthouse, right? And he sees a photo of the Daily Planet's latest headline, which is the new publisher. I guess falls in love with her at first sight, goes on a street where I thought the Daily Planet building was, because Superman was there. Somehow, Superman found out that Nuclear Man is into this girl, and he's looking for her, and after some destruction on the street, Superman baits him to walk into the building that turns out was just the building that Lex's penthouse was in. So the whole climax goes into a giant circle, and they go and fight on the moon, which is, very classic scene everybody knows. And then finally, Nuclear Man shows up to the Daily Planet, kidnaps the woman, takes her to space, where she is still breathing in space for an extreme amount of time. Superman rescues her, flies her back down while she's in complete fine health, and Superman moves the moon. I'm no expert on astrology, but I think if you move the moon out of its orbit, all humans on Earth are dead.
Yeah, like the ocean or some shit would just like fall off the Earth. Like, if I'm not mistaken, there's a tsunami hitting Japan as we speak, Superman. How are you answering for these crimes?
And then it makes Nuclear Man cold, my man shivering, even though space is already cold. But Nuclear Man passes out. Superman proceeds to yeet him into a power plant that creates insane electric for everyone in Metropolis, probably causes electric bills all over the city to skyrocket. So thank you to Superman for starting a new inflation and probably tsunamis everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that scene is so stupid. And he causes, like, a reactor meltdown, and, like, everyone inside the nuclear power plant is, like, freaking out. They're like, why is our energy level so high? Like, he just caused a Chernobyl, which I'm assuming was in, like, whatever the Donnerverse equivalent of New Jersey is. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, none of that made any sense at all.
No.
Like, it honestly is just like, what is some, like, cartoony kind of panel thing we can do to, like, end the heavy of this movie? Like, it's just tonally, it doesn't line up with the elevated stakes of the real world conflict of, like, what nuclear war could do to our planet. And it just, like, it does something really weird. And I don't get it.
I really think if they didn't screw up that last like 20 minutes, I think that movie's passable enough where you get a 5 and they could just keep going. Like, because that climax that's, and when people bring up that movie, you think of the moon fight, you think of like those shots. Like, if you just touch that up and put more of the budget to that instead of this weird love triangle that, I did have like a fondness for but didn't really need, like the gym sequence we talked about, like, if you put more money towards that, I think you could have made a passable enough movie that, like, wouldn't have been good, but would have been like, okay, Superman 5, okay, let's do it.
Well, like, let's play pretend here. You want to make it's 1986, and you're starting production on Superman 4. You found out that Universal's not funding it. They didn't like the diminishing returns from 2 to 3. There was also a lot of problems with the director with 2, and, there was tensions created there, and you're getting this script from Christopher Reeve himself with 2 other co-writers, and so the producers of this film are a new studio taking on an IP that they quite frankly can't afford to make a reputable movie for, but you've got characters, or you got actors that are willing to reprise their roles as those characters, and I'm assuming for a pay cut. So you can't spend money on your heavy because you have Gene Hackman back. Like, in a world where we're making a fantasy version, like the dream Superman 4 with the same budget constraints, you don't need Lex or Lenny. You don't need the Luthors. You just make Nuclear Man the problem. You could do something like a mad scientist in Russia or something. I mean, I'm glad they didn't do this, but like, like some guy accidentally is trying to make a new bomb and makes Nuclear Man. It doesn't need to be Lex.
If the science behind this is Superman's DNA into the sun with nuclear, then you could easily just have, a piece of Superman's hair fall off into the sun. Boom, Nuclear Man's on Earth, and he just wants to, be the alpha and kill anybody that's stronger than him or something.
I believe this came out before the death of Superman.
Oh, interesting.
Is this where they got the idea for Doomsday?
Huh. I never thought of that.
I believe that was 1990.
It's very possible, like somebody to match Superman, and he lost the fight.
If I remember correctly, it is still Lex merging Superman's DNA with his own to make a creature on a planet to be able to destroy Superman. But the thing with Doomsday is it's like each version of himself gets stronger than the last, so he's constantly fighting the past version of himself, a la Mickey 17, a movie that Bong Joon-ho made that's never coming out, apparently. I should have already seen it by now, but it's kicked to March, I guess.
For some reason.
Yeah, for some reason.
The constraints definitely like, yeah, set this movie back, but a couple of tinkering, I don't know. There's a passable Superman movie in this somewhere. Not in this version, but in the making of it. There was there somewhere.
Yeah, and like another thing too is maybe we get into the nitty gritty on 3. I don't think 3 is very good either. I think this is a better movie blow for blow than Superman 3.
So why don't we get into this? So the next part we have a category based edition where we just kind of go through some categories. And why don't we kick it off? I have one category that just says our biggest hot take about the subject, and my biggest hot take is I think Superman 3 is really bad. I would watch this so many times before 3. I don't like 3 at all.
My biggest hot take is... Okay, I got one. Metropolis feels too much like New York in this movie. I don't have that problem with the first two. But maybe it was just because they were using a lot of stock footage and establishing
shots. The Statue of Liberty?
Really? It's just New York. Like, why?
I could give it a pass if I see, like, the Empire State Building or something, but the Statue of Liberty, and he's physically holding it and everything.
Yeah, this isn't Ghostbusters 2, okay? This is Superman 4. Make Metropolis great again. Oh, wait, shit. Cut that.
I really like this idea. The George Award, best outfit, and I added best hair in the movie.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie, Lex's outfit when they go to the museum, that's probably the one I'm taking. He's got those cool checkered plaid pants. He's got that cool white overcoat. He looks a little kind of nutty, but like, honestly, that outfit would ride here in Bushwick. Like, I don't know. That fit goes hard.
I know we criticized the scene, but Clark's Adidas workout outfit in that scene straight up is what a SoundCloud rapper would wear. Like,
yeah, he looks great.
Ahead of the game. Like, completely ahead of the game. And definitely not giving Lex for best hair.
Best hair, I'm giving it to Lacey. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
she's the best female hair style and time, late 80s. Big power suit hair, I'm here for it.
Yeah, you're right. What's the rent? Nicest apartment in the movie.
I've already said mine. Clark's. It's Clark's. I want Clark's apartment so bad.
Lenny's, or not Lenny's.
Lenny doesn't have an apartment. Lenny doesn't pay rent.
What's the name of the other girl?
Lacey?
Not Lois's apartment. Lacey. Lacey's apartment is super nice. Too light on the colors for me though. Doesn't look very cozy. Looks a little more corporate. Lex's penthouse is a lot of fun. It's got pinball. I love me some pinball. In Lenny's corner, there's a lot to do there. Maybe I am picking Lex's thing.
Yeah, can I sublet Lenny's corner of Lex's? Lex's manor, because that penthouse manor is crazy. Also, canonically at the top of the Empire State Building, that rent cannot be cheap.
Wild. The National Geographic Award, best use of stock footage.
Okay, so it has to be the green screen superimposed shot of the Great Wall of China, in my opinion. It's really incredible. I love it. I will say, when they get the miniature going too, maybe the best practical effect in the movie, then they cut to like the second unit footage actually on the Great Wall of China, and that's where it loses me. Like, they have 3 different things they're working with. They're working with the stock footage, they're working with the miniature, like, establishing footage, and then they've also got like the actual like extras diving around from the wall crumbling. And it just, you only need 2 there. You don't need all 3 elements.
If you're reusing Superman going like this from the other movies, is that stock footage at that point?
Yes.
Like, it's just in the Warner Brothers like footage like library that they're just reusing. It's iconic now. Like, when I think of this movie, I think of that shot, so I kind of got to give it to them on my end. Another round. Which actor was the most drunk on set? And I think we both agree it was probably Gene Hackman.
There's a couple of scenes early in the movie with Margot Kidder too, where I'm like, oh man, are you doing okay?
That guy, not the mogul that took it over, the original owner of the Daily Planet, he was not with it in this movie.
Jackie Cooper.
At the end where he's like, we're taking the Daily Planet back, I bought your steaks or whatever.
Oh yeah, he powered through that monologue like without a breath. Like, that dude wanted to get back to the trailer and hit that bottle of Jim Beam right away. I do think Gene Hackman was the most drunk consistently. I don't know if, like, he had great performances after this movie. So it's not like Gene Hackman was washed at this point.
Pretty much all the way up till the late 90s, he had great performances.
Even Royal Tenenbaums, early 2000s, like he had still had multiple legs to his career left. Obviously, his best work's probably in the early 70s, but you know, Gene Hackman, bona fide actor. This might have been like, there's something about like he's looking all blushy and rosaceous. You know, he's looking a little gin blossomed, like red in the face. Like he was hammered. I can confidently say Gene Wilder, or not Gene Wilder. That'd be a different movie. Gene Hackman.
That would be crazy.
Is wildly drunk in this movie.
We definitely didn't miss that. But did I miss something? A major plot point from Superman 3 is canon for some reason. I'm trying to think if there is a weird connection. There isn't a lot of stuff brought up. Well, it seemed to me there was like almost retconning, but at the same time not, because when the Lois scene happened, I was like, did they really retcon this from 2? But no, then they just do it over again. Yeah, I think they even knew Superman 3 was really not worth keeping canon. I'm still trying to figure out what happened to Clark's mom.
Yeah, I think that between like the Kent's like demise and then Lois Lane's memory loss, like there's a big gap in like what information I retain from 2 to 4. Like, and 3 doesn't answer those questions either.
If we're connecting Superman Returns in the Donnerverse, his mom's back. Like, she's in, like, the first scene of that movie. Yeah. So I have no idea what's happening.
Did Superman put her in a home? Like, it's like, I can't take care of you, and we gotta sell the farm. Look, okay? My rent's going up in my Miami Dolphins themed apartment. We gotta get rid of the farm.
I bid too much on that last Dolphins game. I really thought Tua was going all the way, Mom.
A world where Superman's betting on Tua is crazy.
Of course, this was an addition on me. Who do you think the heel of the film was?
The heel of the film? Well,
and I mean, you can interpret this in whatever way you want.
I mean, the real villain of this movie isn't even Lex. Lex is just trying to have fun. I like, part of me wants to be like, oh, the military-industrial complex for building these nukes in the first place, but I'm not going to be that annoying. It's
J.
David
Robert
Warfield.
Oppenheimer?
David Warfield's the heel of this movie.
Yeah,
he's trying
major
to
heel energy.
He's trying to take down the integrity of the Daily Planet. He's all about making a quick buck. And unlike these war profiteer missile guys that Lex like kind of assembles, which I love that scene. I love where Lex is introducing them all to each other, even though they've been sitting there. And he's like... That scene is great. I like all three of those guys.
He fires all of them.
Yeah, the scene where he just goes full like The Apprentice and just like, all right, I'm taking over as the leader of this establishment. My first step of action is you're fired. It's like, it's great. I don't necessarily think that he's too silly in this movie. Like, and it's kind of tonally perfect for the type of film that Superman 4 is. Like, I don't want Luthor to change. Especially when you bring in the comedic relief sidekick Lenny, like he's at like the cartoonish villain status now, and I like that they do that. The heel of this movie is definitely the guy taking over the Daily Planet, Mr. Warfield.
I think I gotta agree. The only redeeming quality about him is he's got a hot daughter.
Unfortunately, yes, and I'm glad that she has a heel to face.
And she's redeemed at the end. Yeah, she turns face at the end.
She gets a redemption arc. Do they keep her at the paper? Is that an unanswerable question?
I think that is unanswerable. Yeah, we really don't. Yeah, does she have her father's fortune after screwing him over?
Does Clark keep her in his life? Another unanswerable question.
Yeah, wait, Clark. We leave the Donnerverse with having no idea who Clark's sleeping with next.
Well, in Superman Returns, he's going back to Lois.
Yeah, and he impregnated her. So eventually, there was something. I think the baby face of the film, it's Christopher Reeve, Superman. Like he carried this whole movie. He deserved a better conclusion to this franchise. As
cheesy as his final speech is, and as like politically on the nose it is, like I don't know if we want to get into this film's politics, but like it's very earnest, and you could tell he wrote that monologue himself and delivers it with tears in his eyes as Superman. And whether I agree with it or not, or like what it's trying to say, like I don't really know, but he does it perfectly, and it's so earnest, and it's so like they say like, oh, Clark's like the last living Boy Scout, and it's like you feel that with Superman in this movie too. And both parts, Christopher Reeve is the face of this movie.
I don't know when they shot that scene, but it's very possible by then he kind of knew this is probably my last performance, and maybe in that he knew it'd be his final scene in that suit. Maybe there was a little, emotion outside of the script.
He does it perfectly. Like, that delivery is great, as cheesy as it is.
This is a throwback from an old pod. What role is Steve Buscemi playing if he was casted?
Okay, so at this time, if we're going,
how old is Steve Buscemi at this time?
Yeah, 1986. Steve Buscemi's like early 30s.
Damn, so I was hoping he was like 25, because I'd be like, mate, he could pull off Lenny.
Yeah, right? I mean, that works. I also think, hear me out, this would be really funny, and you might want to add him into more scenes. You make him the history teacher of the Jeremy classroom.
I want more classroom scenes than if he's the history teacher.
Well, and I want him, like, because you know how, like, I don't know, when, like, the Challenger happened, like, a lot of, like, weird things happen with educators in, like, politics and, like, with, like, student opportunity initiatives. Like, what if he's the one chaperoning the kid to the United Nations building instead of, like, the weird photographer from the Daily Planet whose name no one knows? Who has a fair amount of lines in this movie. Like, he's not an extra, and he's a carryover from the other movies as well.
I had an idea of having Steve Buscemi play Warfield, but I completely changed his character. He's more like Nucky Thompson from Boardwalk Empire, and I have a Mean Streets side plot in my Superman movie as well. Like, show me the underground crime in Metropolis.
I do kind of dig that. That could work.
Yeah. Maybe that could be Superman 5. Maybe Scorsese, please direct Superman 5.
Family Guy's got a good bit on Superman 5, which ties into a joke that we made earlier, which is Superman 5, the broken condom. So, that kind of is what happens in Returns.
Yeah, that's literally the plot of Returns.
Someone make sure Seth MacFarlane wasn't a writer on Superman Returns real quick.
I think we're both a no on this, but I just have remake this ?
I mean,
no. Essentially they're remaking Superman, of course, but this movie, no. This was for the time.
You would have to change too much of it for it to even be considered a reboot. Like, if you wanted to do something like this again, and I think in, like, the world we live in with superhero movies where they all have to be, like, connected and, like, you have, like, some sort of overarching narrative. Like, if you wanted to do something where, like, Superman gets control of, like, the UN on foreign affairs issues and is maybe overstepping in a way in terms of, like, his influence on the planet, then you have a Justice League movie where they're fighting Superman. Like, that could work.
Yeah, that's true.
But in terms of bringing back Nuclear Man and Lenny and a bunch of the weird cheesy shit, no, you can't do this one again. No remake here.
Movie couples. Is this couple goals or incoming divorce? I know they're not married, but let's forget Superman 5 didn't happen. So after this movie, him and it's definitely things are awkward. Especially if Lacey's still in the picture.
Yeah, dude, he can't be double dating them for the rest of his life. Like, he's Superman. He could, in theory, but no, dude.
Yeah. I think things get really messy after the events here. Especially with the gaslighting of Lois. Is he ever gonna tell her?
I mean, it sounds like he probably should. Like, at this point, like, he should let her in on the fact that he's Superman again. Like, I'm surprised that isn't a scene in this movie, because, like, that it's her motivation as selfish as it seems, where, she's talking about Superman to him while he's sick and dying. It's that scene where, he gets the idea to fight back against Nuclear Man and, like, saves the day. So in a way, it's kind of like he knows he needs her. He might as well break the rule his mom gave him about not getting too attached to any humans or whatever. Like,
his mom maybe is dead anyway. So
yeah, exactly. Well, both of his moms are dead now. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, I guess the very beginning of this movie and then the last 20 minutes are so wonky, but then you have that middle that's kind of this fun little Superman movie. But
this movie really doesn't lose me until about, like, the hour and 10-minute mark. Like, it's once like Nuclear Man comes into the picture, it goes to schlock. But everything
Yeah.
before that, I'm like, this is tonally in line enough with Superman 2 and 3 that it's like, I'm not completely lost here. And in a lot of ways, I think it's better than Superman 3.
The Superman 3 is, if we're comparing like tonal shifts, that is the complete tonal shift, because Superman's not really even the main character of that movie. Like, they and the tone is complete comedy. Like,
Yeah,
not
Richard
even
Pryor's the main character of Superman 3.
it's just a crazy, like, that would be like, hey, for the Batman 2, it's actually going to star Pete Davidson, and Batman's gonna kind of take a back seat.
Nightmare Robin casting. Nightmare.
That is a nightmare Robin casting. That's nightmare scenario. I didn't write it down, but any casting what ifs? What would you change?
Are we talking about the Lenny casting change yet, or is that coming up later? Because that's where I'm starting.
Let's do it now. Yeah, let's start with Lenny.
Cool. So Lenny, hear me out. This is gonna be crazy, but it works perfectly. So obviously the writers or producer or studio was like, hey, let's throw in a cousin or a nephew, like weird comedic relief character. We're aiming for something along the lines of like a John Hughes character that's kind of injected into this movie. They literally cast the guy who plays Ducky in Pretty in Pink. Like, they're not even trying to hide it. It's fine. John Cryer's not a bad choice. Like, he's not given any material to work with.
Yeah.
And I know you had a nice little moment about him and did some research in the other video for him and stuff. Not a particularly good actor, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think
a TV legend, but, if we're talking feature films, yeah, totally different story.
So hear me out. It's 1986. You're starting up pre-production for Superman 4, and the worst season of SNL just happened, which had Anthony Michael Hall on it. It had a lot of people that only stuck around for one season.
RDJ, right?
That's who I'm saying. Robert Downey Jr., 1986, casted Superman 4 as Lenny Luthor. Get his feet wet in the superhero genre a little early.
Yeah.
And I think he would have added something to this. He could have been snarkier instead of annoying.
We're kind of on the same plane, because I ironically picked Charlie Sheen, because I wanted more of that snarky like Lex, and I thought maybe towards the end he could turn on Lex, and that's what causes Lex's plan to foil, because his stupid nephew tried being the leader when he's not ready.
Yeah, so, I like the Charlie Sheen pick. Yeah. That's really funny with the 2.5 men tied.
Yeah, I just
go
switched the men. Yeah, no, I think that's really good. I'm trying to think who else I would recast. I mean,
Emilio Estevez would have been an interesting choice as well.
Yeah.
He was hot at the time.
Yeah.
Hot off of Repo Man, I believe.
Repo, yeah. Yeah, because when does The Breakfast Club happen? That's early 80s, right?
I think it's 85, 86.
Oh, is
Let
it?
me check real quick. I think it's like right before this.
87 is Superman 4, yeah.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Breakfast Club is 1985.
It's so interesting we're 2 years away from Batman, and then it feels like Superman movie or superhero movies change forever, only 2 years later.
Yeah,
with the release of Batman.
Yeah, they change forever for a couple of years, and then, if you're ever going back to Batman and Robin, please call me up. I will happily do another episode about that movie.
Do you think I mentioned this in my video, do you think there's any things James Gunn or any future filmmakers tackling Superman could even take from this movie?
If you're gonna do product placement, do it as stupid as this one does with the American Express card.
That's kind of Superman tradition with the Man of Steel IHOP scene.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do a credit card company advertisement in the middle of your Superman movie, have both your female characters use or mention an American Express card in a span of a few moments, please.
I think we both agree. I don't know if we agree with the actual politics that Christopher Reeve was trying to do, but bring that heart back, and also bring Clark Kent back as a character, please. It's really not just a guy with glasses.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the earnesty of this movie is something that I don't know if we could get again in a Superman movie. Specifically a Superman movie. I think you could probably get away with that in, trying to think. Superman is the most earnest superhero, though.
It is weird, because we just had a Batman movie that, yes, was very dark, but ended so hopefully. You had Batman looking up to the sky and everything, so you could if they're able to do that with Batman and it still works, I guess you could do that modernly with Superman even more.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's like, and maybe like James Gunn is the perfect person to do Superman. You know, I don't want him doing every DC superhero movie, but maybe he's the right person to handle the tone, because like, I think a Superman movie should be funny. Like the dynamic that they have with Clark Kent being the alter ego, you know, everyone else has to be a superhero, but Superman is born as Superman. So he has to pretend to be Clark Kent. That's the ego he's trying to like figure out and navigate, because he's born that way.
You gotta embrace it, because he is like an alien from outer space coming to Earth. I think a lot of people also forget the sci-fi aspect of Superman too. He is not from this Earth.
Right.
Yeah, he's, at the end of the day, he is, you know, just a guy from Kansas, but also you should embrace that he has always felt like an outsider as well.
Yep, I agree. And I think like tonally that needs to be a through line in the film. You know, Clark Kent needs to feel like the guy who doesn't know what's gonna happen next. Superman can just fix everything. That's the whole point of Superman. But the conflict of the movie, I think, needs to be centered around Clark Kent. Yeah.
No, I agree. Especially for the first movie, which I know isn't an origin movie, but you need to establish Clark Kent, because that's what I think was the biggest issue with Man of Steel. And I don't want to go on a Zack Snyder rant or everything, but I don't know who Clark Kent is. He was some guy that didn't save his dad in a tornado.
I guess, yeah.
Like there was nothing there for me. I don't know. But overall, the title of my video that came out on FaceTheAce is Superman 4 underrated? Would you agree with that, to close things out?
Is Superman 4 underrated? In parts. But I also think this movie kind of has a little bit of a cult fan base. Like, I know Mark Pillow still goes to conventions and, like, does meet and greets, and he's just
honestly
Nuclear
good for
Man.
him.
Like,
Get that check.
like, there's people who care about that kind of stuff. And, like, I do think this movie is kind of not great, but it's got good elements in it. Honestly, I think a better question would be what are you giving this movie on Letterboxd?
I think it's public. Yeah, I gave it 2 stars. Okay. I think it's the perfect 2-star superhero movie. Turn my brain off and kind of just laugh at it in a genuine way. I'm not nostalgia critic making fun of every little nitpick. It's not that type of laughter. It's like, I understand what was wrong with it, and I could appreciate what went right with it. And Christopher Reeve, an actor that I have a lot of respect for, that I really admire, him being that the last Superman performance, there's a lot of connection there. And I think that's why a lot of people do have a connection with this movie, because of him. He really is like the MVP of this whole like series. He's still the MVP of Superman, unless, whatever his name is can take up the mantle, but I doubt it.
Yeah, so the antagonist from Twisters is got a lot of work to do.
Christopher Reeve's the Michael Jordan, man. I don't think it's ever changing. I don't think he's ever leaving that mantle.
I kind of agree. I mean, I think a lot of the movie is going to come down to casting and if they fit tonally with whatever James Gunn is writing. But, I think that this is a 2.5 star. Like, I do think this movie leans on the underrated side. I think its pacing is good. The only scenes in this movie where I'm bored are the action scenes, because they look like shit and they are cheap. Like, and that's fine. Like, I can fast forward through an 8-minute long montage of like really bad fight choreography between Nuclear Man and Superman. That's that's how I feel about most superhero movies. Is the worst part is the fight scenes. And
watching those fights, it just made me think. I'm like, wow, it's so weird. I've only had like 4 or 5 Superman fight scenes after this, and it's 2025. Like, my whole thing watching this, I'm like, why is it so hard to make a Superman movie? Like, Warner, get it together, dude. Yeah. Like it's crazy. I've only had I'm not gonna count like Justice League or anything. I've had 2 Superman movies since this one. That's crazy. It's 2025. I'm about to get my 3rd.
Yeah,
it's insane. Wild. Yeah, I think that was a great discussion. And anything you'd like to add?
No, if you haven't seen it, I believe the entire Superman, Richard Donner series is on Max right now to watch. So check them out for yourself.
I might give it a watch and maybe give a little bit of my thoughts on it too.
Yeah, I'm really glad you didn't ask me to watch Superman 3.
Know your fucking place, trash.
If you gave me a little bit more time, like not like 3 days ago, I probably would have watched all of the Donner movies again, just to like come in with the right amount of context. But you know,
Maybe one day
pretty good.
we'll go through some of them.
Okay.
Hopefully not 3.
Yeah, we'll pass on 3.
I'd like to talk about the others though. But yeah, man, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hope to be back whenever you need someone to talk about a movie that you're like, has Nate's seen this? Yeah, has anyone seen this thing? Oh yeah, Nate has.
Hell yeah, thank you all for watching. If you have anything you want me to watch or you want Nate to come on and you want us to talk about, let me know. This has been Ace2Face on Face the Ace, and I will see you all in the next video.